directors Jeff Reisner and Jason Tobias, who also stars in the movie, bring us Forget Everything and Run, also known as F.E.A.R. Now this is essentially, I guess, but a cross between The Walking Dead and A Quiet Place. Ultimately it boils down to a zombie apocalypse survival film. But what is the plot synopsis? Okay, so it takes place in a snowy wilderness where there has been some type of viral outbreak, some type of contagion caused by, some type of industrial experiment or accident, things like this. And this takes place a little while later. And it seems that the powers that be have actually built a wall around this kind of infected area to try and stop it from spreading to the rest of the country. However, there are a few families and survivors trapped kind of behind the wall, and this focuses on one such family where we have the father, the mother, a young boy, and a kind of a teenage girl who is kind of infected, but she is ultimately kept in kind of like a coma. And they have to survive both kind of attacks from these vicious 28 Days Later style rage zombies and also marauding cannibals that have taken up residence as well and are obviously fighting for scraps and supplies. What will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So let's talk about the positives. What works in this movie? I like the idea of having this movie set in a snowy kind of wilderness, because I do think it gives it some type of visual stylistic choices that do look quite stunning at times. And the movie actually uses this setting as a kind of a plot device as well. Actually, zombies are attracted to heat. This is why there's kind of like some type of advantage in kind of hiding out in the snowy wilderness, because, obviously it's not particularly hot up there. However, the downside is, of course, is they can't light fires and things like that. So it's kind of like has this element where the rules of the world are a little bit restrictive, a little bit like A Quiet Place. I think the zombie attacks seem quite vicious. Again, they're kind of like the 28 Days Later style zombies, where they're kind of fast moving, not entirely sure if they're kind of completely undead or anything like that. It doesn't go into a huge amount of detail, which we'll come on to. But nonetheless, the zombies do seem quite threatening, quite kind of like unpredictable at times, and there's no kind of humanity left. And you can, they're even kind of like someone who is a family member, they're going to be completely kind of crazed and things like this. I've got to say, I think the acting was pretty good with our cast here. I think all the actors here do a solid job in giving kind of earnest performances, and there's not really any type of actor here that I think lets the side down. I think the whole cast here do a decent enough job with some somewhat ham-fisted dialogue, which we'll talk about again. But I don't think it's the actor's fault here. I think it's more of a script issue. But the acting was all okay. There are some reasonable kind of set pieces, but they are fair and few between. But let's talk about what doesn't work. You've seen these type of movies to a penny. So The Walking Dead on TV screens, it seems kind of pointless having a movie which is so similar to it in a lot of ways, especially a lower budget kind of B-movie one. The dialogue. The dialogue here is really trite, unfortunately. Like I said, I think the acting here isn't bad. The actors do a decent enough job. However, they are spouting out some ultimately cheesy kind of dialogue with unrealistic kind of monologues, things like this. Ridiculous kind of silly dialogue that it's just not realistic. It's just kind of like cheesy film dialogue that people would never say in real life. And I think you can get away with it in things like movies like blockbusters and stuff, because that's kind of what you expect. When you have a low budget, gritty kind of zombie movie, you want to try and kind of elevate it any way you can. And having crappy dialogue is not a good idea, I don't think. I thought the dialogue here was, obviously it's mixed all over the place, but there was some really bad hammy dialogue here. The zombies really don't play much into this kind of, this movie at all, to be honest with you. It's more about human drama. And, if you're anything like me, yeah, human drama is all great, and that's why we have drama movies. But we kind of want to watch horror movies that have horror in them. And unfortunately, this one falls flat in having very little to do with the actual zombies themselves. Now I know that is kind of what The Walking Dead has been like, but that is a long-running TV series. It has to kind of be more than just kind of zombie attacks. So this is why you have to have that dramatic element to that. So I don't feel like you can compare the two properties. But in a film which is just over an hour and a half, and you want to watch a zombie movie, having the kind of like the oh great, it's humans being pushed to the limit. It's great if that's what your film was about. But I've got a feeling this is the kind of the whole conceit of this movie. You kind of want to watch that action zombie movie. And you double the fact that you have this crappy dialogue with characters that are just cliches. I mean, we have our kind of hick, hillbilly style cannibals, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, they're kind of their dialogue, the way they're depicted, it's completely stereotypical and cliche. There's not a huge amount of plot in this movie, and there's a hell of a lot of exposition. Now, this movie is obviously suffering from a lack of budget because we never really see much in the way of how things got started. I'm assuming this is why we don't see a lot of the zombies, but it's given to you in a lot of dialogue throughout the movie, and it's just like scene after scene after scene of exposition dumps. And I've got to be honest with you, I think the world building in this movie is pretty poor. Because I didn't really know why the movie, what the circumstances were leading up to this. Even right up until the end, to be honest with you, it kind of just goes into this world and tells you little nuggets here and there, but never really kind of like brings you along for the ride. And at the end, you obviously, kind of watch the whole film, you get a better idea. But the problem is this world, even some of the characters in this film, I was thinking, who's that? There's a character who's like got shot in the eye and they kind of eye. I thought, well, who's this? And it does a really poor job, I think, of having a good narrative flow. Like not really setting up the movie. It's a poor amount of kind of world building, cheesy dialogue, not a huge amount of kind of horror involved. More trying to kind of go around this kind of drama path. And if you've got good dialogue, well written dialogue, and an interesting story, then maybe you can get away with that. But this movie does not do that, and ultimately becomes quite a bore. It's not a badly made film, I think, on a technical level. It does have some finesse, but the writing here is definitely the kind of the worst part of it. And having a kind of a director that I think is kind of so involved and this is again, I've said it in many movies. You need producers that can kind of push back, especially on lower budget indie movies, and say, I know this is your vision, but kind of you need to try and think about third party people, what they're going to think, and blah blah blah. So I never think this a lot of filmmakers, a lower budget movies, these indie filmmakers, kind of have a lot of people that will kind of say no to them, and that it's something they should have. Anyway, as it stands at the moment, I don't think this movie is particularly exciting. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. It's a below average movie without being necessarily a bad film, just pretty dull ultimately. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.